Ethan Cole was a cowboy of few words, hardened by sun and saddle. His pride and joy was Dusty, a loyal buckskin horse who had carried him through storms, stampedes, and countless lonely nights. Man and beast were inseparable, until one evening when Dusty disappeared. The corral gate stood open, hoofprints leading into the desert. Ethan searched into the night, lantern swinging, calling Dusty's name. Coyotes howled in the distance, and dread weighed heavy on his chest. Dusty wasn't just a horse. He was Ethan's only true companion. At dawn, exhausted and empty-handed, Ethan slumped by the campfire. The desert stretched endless and unforgiving, mocking his loss. He muttered bitterly, "Guess I'm alone again." Sleep took him in restless fits, haunted by the thought of his horse gone forever. The next morning, hoofbeats echoed across the plain. Ethan rose, rubbing his eyes. There, trotting steadily toward camp, was Dusty. Relief surged through him, but then his jaw dropped. On Dusty's back sat an Apache woman, proud and calm, riding as if she had always belonged. Her dark hair shimmered in the sunlight, braided with beads. She dismounted gracefully, landing with the poise of a warrior. Dusty nickered softly beside her, nudging her shoulder affectionately. Ethan's hand went to his holster, heart racing with confusion. The woman's gaze met his steady, unflinching. "Your horse wandered," she said in accented English. "I found him." Ethan blinked. "And who might you be?" She lifted her chin. "Naya." That was all. No apology, no explanation. Just a name strong as the desert wind. Ethan struggled to speak. "You rode him back here." "Dusty don't take kindly to strangers." Naya's lips curved faintly. "He trusts me. Animals know truth." Ethan glanced at Dusty, who stood calm, utterly unbothered. His horse had never allowed another rider before. Suspicion gnawed at him. "Why bring him back? You could have kept him." Naya's expression hardened. "Because he belongs to you. And because honor matters." The simplicity of her words cut through him. Ethan lowered his hand from his holster, uncertain what to feel. Naya turned to leave, but Ethan called after her. "Wait, you got no horse yourself. Where's your camp?" She hesitated, eyes clouding with something unsaid. "Far, too far." Then she walked into the desert, her figure shrinking against the vast horizon. That night Ethan couldn't rest. He replayed her face in the firelight, her words echoing. Dusty's trust unsettled him most. Horses knew things men didn't. If Dusty accepted her, what did that mean? Ethan muttered, "You know something I don't, old boy." Days passed, but Ethan couldn't forget. He caught himself scanning ridges, listening for footsteps. His solitude felt heavier now, haunted by the memory of Naya's eyes. She had appeared like a spirit, carried to him by the horse he thought he'd lost. Fate moved swiftly. While driving cattle near the canyon, Ethan was ambushed by bandits. Outnumbered, pinned against the rocks, he drew his revolver in desperation. Then, from the cliffs above, arrows hissed through the air. Bandits fled, shouting in panic. Ethan looked up and there she was. Naya stood tall, bow in hand, hair whipping in the wind. She had saved his life without a word. As silence returned, she descended the rocks. Ethan's gratitude was tangled with awe. "You again," he whispered. She said nothing, only studied him with calm eyes. Ethan finally spoke. "Why help me?" Naya shrugged. "Because Dusty trusts you, and because I chose to." That simple answer struck him harder than any bullet could. She was bound to him by choice, not chance. From then on, their paths crossed often. Ethan found her at the river, gathering earth. She appeared in the hills, watching the horizon. At first they exchanged few words, but slowly silence gave way to stories. Hers of Apache traditions, his of cowboy life. She showed him healing plants, sacred songs, and the tales of her ancestors. He taught her cattle work, lasso tricks, and the ways of ranching. Each learned from the other, and the desert between their worlds grew smaller with every meeting. Dusty became their bridge. Naya rode him with ease, guiding him through trails Ethan never knew existed. Watching them, Ethan marveled. "Never thought I'd share him with anyone," he admitted once. Naya only smiled. "He chose me too." Whispers spread in town. Cowboys muttered that Ethan was seen with an Apache woman. "You'll ruin yourself," they warned. Ethan spat in the dirt. "She saved my life. That's worth more than your wagging tongues." He didn't care what they thought anymore. Naya confided one evening, "My people expect me to marry among my own. But my heart," she hesitated, eyes uncertain. Ethan reached for her hand. "Your heart's free. Same as mine. Don't let anyone bind it." She trembled, caught between duty and desire. As their bond grew, danger returned. Outlaws threatened the valley, raiding ranches. Ethan joined the riders defending the land. But it was Naya's knowledge of hidden trails that led them to victory. Her bravery turned suspicion into reluctant respect among the settlers. Still, not all hearts softened. Some settlers glared when she walked through town. Naya bore it silently, chin high. Ethan stayed close by her side, daring anyone to insult her. His quiet devotion became a shield stronger than words. One night by the campfire, Ethan finally confessed, "I thought I lost everything when Dusty vanished. But he brought me you. Losing my horse led me to finding my heart." Naya's eyes shone, her voice trembling. "And I thought honor was my only guide. Until you." Their love deepened, tested by trials. When fever struck Ethan, Naya nursed him with herbs and prayers, refusing to leave his side. Dusty stood guard outside the cabin, as if knowing their lives had fused into one unbreakable bond. When Ethan recovered, he told her, "I owe you more than I can give." She pressed her hand to his chest. "You owe me nothing. Love is not a debt. It is a gift." In that moment, he knew he could never let her go. From then on, they lived not as Cowboy and Apache, but as two souls bound by fate. Dusty had carried her into his life, and together they built a love story. Whispered across the desert, what began with loss had become destiny. Ethan and Naya's days began to blend. She visited often, sometimes bringing herbs, sometimes just silence. Ethan grew used to her presence, and Dusty seemed happier when she was around. It was as if the horse had chosen her to complete the bond they all shared. One evening, as the sun sank into the desert, Ethan found Naya sitting by the river. She hummed a tune, soft and haunting, the kind that lingered in the soul. Ethan sat quietly beside her, letting the melody wash over him like a prayer carried by the wind. She told him stories of her people, tales of the coyote, of the eagle, of spirits who guided the land. Ethan listened with respect, realizing how much richer the world became through her voice. She gave meaning to the desert he had thought barren. Ethan shared his own tales. Stampedes survived, cattle driven across endless plains and lonely nights beneath cold stars. Naya listened intently, never mocking his hardships. Instead, she offered wisdom, showing him how resilience was not just survival but a kind of grace. The settlers, however, grew restless with whispers. They warned Ethan, he was courting trouble, that Naya's presence would divide loyalties. But Ethan, hardened by years of solitude, cared little for gossip. He valued truth over rumor, and Naya embodied truth. One day, Ethan brought Naya into town openly. Heads turned, conversations halted. She walked proudly, unashamed, her dignity unshaken. Ethan matched her stride, daring anyone to challenge them. Though eyes burned with judgment, no voice dared speak against his resolve. Their union was tested when raiders struck the valley. Ethan rallied with other cowboys, but they were outmaneuvered until Naya appeared, guiding them through a hidden pass. Her knowledge saved lives. Those who had doubted her saw courage that could not be denied. After the raid, townsfolk reluctantly offered thanks. Naya accepted with quiet grace, though her eyes revealed the burden of being always judged. Ethan saw it too and vowed never to let her stand alone. He would fight the world beside her, if need be. At night their bond grew deep. By firelight, Ethan reached for her hand. She hesitated only a moment before letting his rough fingers intertwine with hers. For a man who had once spoken little, his heart spoke loudest in that gentle touch. Naya admitted she felt torn between two worlds. "My people say I betray them. Yours say I don't belong. Where do I fit?" "Ethan," he answered softly, "with me, here, always." His words settled over her like a promise stronger than blood. Their love became a quiet rebellion, a defiance of prejudice. In Naya, Ethan found balance, fierce and tender, loyal and in Ethan, Naya found acceptance, steady, unwavering and true. Together they carved a space where two hearts could live unshackled. One summer drought tested the ranch, cattle suffered, the well ran low and despair threatened Ethan's spirit. But Naya never faltered. She found springs hidden in rocky ground, herbs to strengthen the herd, and songs to lift their hearts. She gave him hope when he had none. Ethan marveled at her strength. "You saved us again," he said one evening. Naya shook her head. "We saved us. You and I together." That truth struck him. He was no longer alone in the fight. For the first time his burdens were shared. Dusty, ever faithful, seemed to glow in their company. He carried them both across the desert, their laughter mingling with the wind. Ethan often thought it no accident. His horse had vanished only to return with the one person who would change his life forever. One night, beneath a sky alive with stars, Ethan confessed, "I don't know much about fate, but if it's real, then Dusty brought you to me." Naya pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "And maybe I was meant to find you too." Seasons turned and so did hearts. Some townsfolk began to accept what they once condemned. They saw how Ethan and Naya stood together through trials, their love slowly, respect replaced suspicion, though a few still clung to bitterness. When Ethan fell ill from exhaustion, Naya tended him day and night. She whispered prayers in her language, placed cool cloths on his brow, and fed him broth with gentle care. He woke to her tired eyes, filled with love, and knew he would never let her go. "I thought I'd die alone," he admitted weakly. She smiled faintly. "Not anymore." That moment bound them tighter than any. Ethan had survived countless dangers, but it was Naya's devotion that truly saved his life. By autumn their bond was no longer hidden. They rode together, worked together, and faced whispers together. Ethan never flinched from calling her his partner. Naya, once uncertain, now stood confident in the knowledge that love was her truest belonging. One evening, Ethan carved a small token from wood, a heart with Dusty's likeness etched inside. He handed it to Naya shyly. "Not much," he said, "but it's yours." She held it as if it were gold, tears shining in her eyes. For her it was everything. The horizon stretched wide and uncertain, but Ethan and Naya knew they would face it together. What began with a horse lost to the desert had become a love story strong enough to defy worlds. And still, their journey was only beginning. The bond between Ethan and Naya grew so steady that even Dusty seemed to sense it. He no longer carried Ethan alone, but willingly bore them both, their laughter mingling with the steady rhythm of what had once been a lonely ride became a journey shared. When autumn storms rolled in, they faced them side by side. Rain poured over the plains, wind tearing at fences, but Naya's calm guidance steadied Ethan. She taught him how her people read the sky, how to move with the storm rather than fight it. During one long night of thunder, Ethan admitted, "I never thought I'd have more than Dusty, thought that was my lot." Naya looked into the firelight. "I thought that honor was all I had left, but now we both have more than we dreamed." Life on the ranch shifted in quiet but meaningful ways. Naya planted herbs along the cabin, her songs filling the evening air. Ethan built her a bench by the porch, where they often sat in companionable silence, the desert stretching endlessly before them. Though whispers in town lingered, they mattered less with every passing season. People saw how Ethan stood by Naya, never wavered. Respect began to outweigh judgment, and some even sought her knowledge of healing herbs, humbled by her steady kindness. One day a wounded traveler came through, fevered and weak. Naya tended him until he recovered, and word spread of her. Townsfolk who once turned their backs now sent for her when illness struck. Slowly her worth became undeniable even to doubters. Ethan beamed with pride each time her name was spoken with gratitude. "Told you," he would say with a grin. "She's stronger than all of." Naya, embarrassed, would shake her head, but in her heart she began to believe she had found her place. Their love deepened further when Ethan carved a necklace of bone and turquoise for her. Handing it over awkwardly, he said, "Ain't fancy, but it's from." Naya placed it around her neck, tears glimmering. "It's more precious than gold," she whispered. As the years passed, their partnership proved unshakable. They faced drought, hunger and raids, but never turned from one another. What began with suspicion had become trust. What began with fear had blossomed into love, fierce and enduring. One night under a harvest moon, Ethan finally spoke what had long been in his heart. "Marry me, Naya. Not in a church, not in town, here, under the stars where the land can witness." Her smile lit the night brighter than the moon itself. They pledged themselves to each other with no preacher and no papers. Only vows whispered in the desert wind. Dusty stood close, ears flicking as if understand. That night, they became husband and wife in the truest way possible. Bound by choice and love, their union soon became legend in the valley. Folks who once scorned them now admired their courage, telling tales of the cowboy and the Apache woman who defied both worlds to build a life together. Their story carried hope for those who felt out of place. Naya grew to be not just Ethan's wife, but a leader in her own right. Settlers sought her wisdom, and her people saw her strength. She became a bridge no one had expected, proof that unity was possible where division once reigned. Ethan often marveled at how far they had come. "All this," he said once, gesturing to the thriving ranch, "because Dusty went missing." Naya laughed softly. "Sometimes you have to lose something to find what truly matters." Their adopted way of life merged both traditions. They celebrated harvests with Apache songs and cowboy feasts, blending two worlds into one. Children from both sides came to play at their ranch, learning that friendship knew no boundaries. Even in hardship, their love never faltered. When a brutal winter froze the land, they survived together, wrapped in blankets, telling stories by the fire. For Ethan it was no longer survival. It was living, and it was joy because she was there. Spring returned with blossoms across the desert, and Ethan felt renewed. He and Naya rode Dusty through fields of wild flowers. Their laughter carried on the breeze. What once had been barren land now felt alive, just as his once empty heart had bloomed with love. Naya continued teaching Ethan her people's ways, how to listen to the wind, how to track water by the flight of birds, how to honor the land that sustained them. In return, Ethan showed her how to brand cattle and mend fences. Together they balanced survival with respect. Dusty grew older but remained strong, carrying them faithfully. Ethan often patted his neck, whispering, "You brought her to me, old boy. Don't think I'll ever forget it." Naya would smile knowingly, for she too believed fate had worked through the whole. One evening, children from the nearby settlement gathered at their cabin. Naya told stories by firelight while Ethan handed out jerky and biscuits. The children sat wide-eyed, listening to legends of spirits and cowboys, their worlds blending seamlessly in the glow of the flame. When illness swept through the valley, Naya's skill saved many lives. She brewed teas from roots and poultices from herbs, her hands steady, her knowledge invaluable. Ethan stood at her side, carrying water and wood, proud that the woman once scorned was now on. Even the hardest skeptics softened. "She's got the gift," one elder muttered after her remedies saved his grandson. For Naya it was vindication. For Ethan it was proof that love and courage could overcome prejudice, one heart at a time. Still, danger lurked. Bandits returned one summer, bolder than before. Ethan and Naya rode with the ranchers, Dusty galloping fast despite his age. Naya's arrows and Ethan's revolvers struck in unison, their teamwork as natural as breathing. Victory belonged to them. After the fight, Ethan turned to her. "Couldn't have done it without you." Naya smiled, brushing dust from her cheek. "Nor I without you." It was the truth of their bond. Two lives once apart, now inseparable, each completing the other. Seasons passed, carving new lines in their faces, but never dimming their love. They built a life of balance, the ranch thriving, the cabin full of warmth. Friends and neighbors came often, drawn by the peace that surrounded them like sunlight on stone. Ethan sometimes reflected on the man he once was, silent, lonely, bound only to a horse. Now he had a wife, a partner, and a family forged by love. Losing Dusty was the best thing that ever happened, he often mused. Naya always laughed. At harvest celebrations, Naya danced to Apache drums while Ethan clapped along. He had once been an outsider to such traditions, but now he joined freely, embraced by both cultures. Their love had not only changed them, but healed wounds across the valley. Dusty slowed with age, but he remained at the heart of their lives. When children visited, he let them climb his back gently. Naya whispered, "He carries not just riders, but destiny." Ethan agreed. Dusty had always been more than a horse. One evening Ethan carved a small wooden horse, and handed it to Naya, For when Dusty's gone, he said quietly. Naya held it close. He will live in every step we take. Because he brought us together. Her words soothed the ache Ethan feared. As the years turned, they grew old together. Wrinkles came. Hair silvered. But their bond never weakened. They often sat on the porch, watching sunsets. Dusty grazing nearby. Time they knew would take much. But it could never take the love they had built. On quiet nights, Ethan whispered, "I lost a horse and found my soul." Naya would smile, leaning her head against his shoulder. Their story had begun with loss, but it ended with abundance. Proof that destiny sometimes comes on four hooves, and leaves a trail of love. Time passed, and Ethan and Naya's legends spread across the territory. Travelers spoke of the cowboy and the Apache woman, bound not by chance but by destiny. Their story became a reminder that love could bridge even the widest divides. As their children grew and started families of their own, the ranch rang with laughter and footsteps. Grandchildren played in the fields where Ethan once rode alone, their joy echoing into the desert sky. The Holloway land had become a sanctuary of unity. Dusty, now gray with age, moved slowly but remained a symbol of their bond. Ethan often sat with him in the evenings, hand resting on the horse's neck. "You gave me a life I never thought I'd have," he whispered, gratitude filling his heart. When Dusty finally passed one quiet night, Ethan and Naya buried him beneath a cottonwood tree by the river. They placed stones in a circle, marking the spot where fate had once tied their lives together. Both wept, but both smiled through the tears. "His journey's over," Naya said softly. Ethan nodded, "But he'll ride with us forever." And in that moment, they knew the horse's spirit lived on in the love he had carried into Ethan's life. As years turned to decades, Ethan and Naya became elders respected by all. Settlers sought their advice, and Apache families visited often, bridging the gap that once divided them. Their ranch was proof that harmony could grow in even the harshest deserts. One night, as the fire crackled low, Ethan turned to Naya. "You remember the day Dusty came back with you on his back?" She smiled faintly. It was the day everything began. Their eyes met, still carrying the same fire after so many years. In old age, they still rode together, though shorter distance. Ethan would help Naya onto the saddle, and together they would follow the trail to the ridge, watching the sun bleed gold across the horizon. Each sunset was another vow renewed. When illness finally touched Ethan, Naya stayed at his side as she had in the past. She whispered songs, held his hand, and reminded him of the life they had built. Ethan, weary but peaceful, smiled. "I was never alone. Not since the day you came." After his passing, Naya carried on, surrounded by children and grandchildren. She told their story by the fire, her voice steady. "He lost his horse, but he found his heart, and I found mine in him." Their love lived on in every retelling. Years later, when Naya herself joined him in eternal rest, they were buried side by side near Dusty's grave. 3 lives bound together, cowboy, horse, and Apache woman, resting in the land that had witnessed their journey. Their descendants tended the ranch with pride, honoring the legacy of courage and love. Travelers still visited, leaving small tokens at the grave site. A feather, a horseshoe, a carved figure, all came to honor the story that had become legend. In time, the valley spoke less of prejudice, and more of unity. The story of Ethan and Naya lived on, whispered in town squares, sung around campfires, a tale of loss turned to love, carried forever by the winds of the desert. And so it was remembered. A cowboy who lost his horse, a horse who returned with an Apache woman, and the love that grew from that fateful meeting. What began as a lonely man's sorrow became a love strong enough to heal 2 worlds.